Good. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us today on the Thursday agenda. And for all of you who are joining us on NTN television, welcome. Those of you joining us on Facebook Live, welcome as well. I can see that our link is live. You can find the link on my page on Facebook, on my MP page, on the page of the Vice President or the PPPC, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to all of you. And of course, as usual, I say good night to my little son, Sawyer. Good night, Daddy loves you. It's time to go to sleep. And this week's Thursday agenda, we're going to try to get through a little bit more than we would do ordinarily. And for all of you who are joining us from Toronto, from Essequibo, Howard Rankisoon, others, I have to say specifically, I received some messages, well, a number of messages, and I thank you for same. And I want to say hello to the folks in Berbice who are watching, and they say I never give them credit for being here. So welcome to the folks in Berbice and Corriverton and Crabwood Creek. Welcome to all of you for being here, and good evening to all of you. Now, we weren't here last week because had other commitments last week, and we had a busy day, of course. So we're going to do some of the things that are current, but we're going to deal with one issue that happened before. One of the things that is important, I feel, that we deal with is persons who they distort simple things. They make assumptions about what things mean and what things are, and they come to conclusions, obviously because of wrong assumptions. They come to conclusions that are simply preposterous, and then they promulgate it in social media and other media about what's going on. Now, one of the things I wanted to raise and to tell you about is there was a letter, a curious letter written by a man who was a former policeman, and the substance of his letter was essentially to allege and quoting sections of the law as it related to perjury. Now, if we take a step back, and if it were that the law operated in such an impractical, facetious manner, then really and truly the law will serve no purpose. Perjury is simply if you willfully give false evidence under oath. The letter I'm referring to is from a former policeman, Mr. Slow, and he makes an allegation against the Prime Minister. But he makes an allegation about what the Prime Minister said relating to a meeting between himself and His Excellency the President. But without getting into the whole ridiculous narrative that he raised, it's important that you know this. The letter itself demonstrates the fallacy of the argument as it relates to any inference or otherwise of perjury. The substance of the letter, or the substance of the paragraph in the affidavit sworn to by the Prime Minister, says that he is advised by counsel. He verily believes that what is said is scandalous, meaning it should not be included in an affidavit. It is hearsay, which means it's not legally admissible. And so those are things which a lawyer will advise about. Every lawyer, I'm a lawyer, and every lawyer advises all the time about the contents of affidavits. The issue about whether there was an organized meeting between Mr. Slow and His Excellency versus a meeting that occurred is very important. And that was the substance of what it was. Now, you can't say that someone is willfully being false when what they're really saying to you is what you have put in your affidavit is in fact, as far as the law is concerned, garbage. It's not admissible. It shouldn't be included in an affidavit, and it should be struck out. So there is nothing there that would relate to whether or not he has said A or B. What it consists of is what he's been advised by his lawyer, and he's acted on that advice. Now, you can't put hearsay things into an affidavit, meaning you can't go and say A told B and told C and C told me what A said, if you understand that. So let me break it down. You can't say what someone else has said who is not saying it and is not a party to the proceedings and has no role to play in the proceedings, because that there is no way that you could verify that except by getting to the man who actually said it. So to make these wild allegations about persons committing perjury, and the Prime Minister to boot, is simply nonsensical. It is demonstrative of an agenda, demonstrative of a disturbed, skewed agenda where you want to make things out to be where they're not. And you should know better if you're a policeman. You should understand the basic rules of evidence. You should understand basic law. You were a policeman for a number of years. And you can't go about skewing it to suit your purpose, skewing the law, that is, to suit your purpose, or twisting what one says, because you've got to remember, at the end of the day, willfully, you must give false evidence to be guilty of perjury. If you're simply saying that what you're saying is not exactly so, and as far as I'm aware, it is not exactly so, then that has nothing to, how could you be willfully saying that it's wrong? So, just to briefly address that, and you see, when these things are said, we have to call them out, because they remain as part of the process, they remain as part of the narrative and the public sentiment on something, which is totally ridiculous. And these sorts of things, then if you don't respond to them, then they come back 2 years later and said, well, oh, you did this. Again, make it very clear. You can't go about defining things the way you want it to define. You can't have the legal concepts be twisted to mean what you think it means when it clearly means something else. It is tantamount to the whole argument of whether 33 is more than half of 65. I mean, you can go about saying that it's not, and you can go about saying that 33 is not half of 65. No one can stop you doing that. You'd be downright a clown, you'd be foolish, but you could say it. Again, you could make your accusations wild, unfounded, unsubstantiated, things that have no basis in law about perjury. It doesn't mean it's perjury. And if you know what the rules of perjury is, and if you understand what perjury means, then that could never be perjury. and the entire conversation and the entire contents of the letter is really a waste of newsprint and not worth the paper it's printed on. So that's part of what we wanted to deal with in terms of what happens about that. There is, of course, the other issue about people who make these wild accusations and wild statements. And I want to put that in context of so many other statements that are made, and so many other wild accusations, and so many promises. So we can take, and we should bear in mind, that nomination day for local government elections is Monday coming. So all the parties and all the persons, independent or politically affiliated to a political party, will want to know whether or not and how they should assimilate and treat with things that people say. Now, take for example all of the things that are being said publicly in relation to finances and the PAC, for example. I sit on the PAC, so I can tell you a little about what is said. And there was a Georgetown rehabilitation program, I don't remember the exact name, but there were hundreds of millions of dollars allocated to that program, supposedly to rehabilitate Georgetown, to make it a better place, and to fix many of the ills that existed. But when the PAC looked at it, they could find no accountability for the monies. They could find no vouchers, no receipts that say how hundreds of millions of dollars are spent. These are things that we should remember when we have, at the local government elections, persons who sit in the town council at present. The opposition members are a majority. The mayor belongs to the opposition party. But there was all of this that came about, and they can't account for the funds. They can't account for the monies that were there. And this is the Auditor General's report. He's saying basically we don't know what happened in relation to the funds. We can't find proper records. We weren't supplied with proper records. These are the things that are being said. We then have, so there's accountability. That's an important fact. Allocating funds to do something and doing something and accounting for the monies that you use to do it is part of what you must consider. So when we have, again, local government elections, you, the electorate, should remember that these people could not account for their expenditure. And you should bear that in mind, because you would want responsible leaders. You want leaders who are accountable. And you should bear in mind those who are not accounting for their expenditures. And you shouldn't give them a chance again. So bear those things in mind. Bear in mind the obvious clamoring that you hear from the opposition about all manner of things that relate to the petroleum sector, and wanting to see or wanting to have information made available. Now, the simple thing is the environmental permits. Since the PPP returned to power under the guidance of the Vice President and His Excellency the President, all of those permits have been made public. And you can see exactly what has happened. And you sit and you complain in opposition, but you never made it public. You kept secret the signing bonus. You didn't want to put it into the consolidated fund. You kept the PSA, the contract, secret, We waited years to get those documents. So you're clamoring for transparency, and you're saying you want transparency, but you were never transparent. And we have a government now under His Excellency, the President, that is transparent, that is making these documents available to you. Again, these are things that you have to remember. It's easy for you to say anything, but you gotta be judged, and you should be judged on what you did when you had the reins of power. Did you make these things available to the public? Did you disclose in a timely manner? Look at the regime, and you heard the Vice President only this afternoon speak about it. Look at the regime that exists now. The formula for the calculation of what portion of oil revenues will be used in the budget and will be used for infrastructure development projects, will be used to fund that, which Guyana sorely needs. We desperately need it if we are going to make it and we're going to lift this country of ours. The formula is straightforward. The first $500 million shall go to the it will go to the budget. Now, when it goes to the budget, like every budgetary allocation, how it is used is debated in the Parliament. It is disclosed in the Parliament how the funds are being used. Now, previously there was a convoluted formula that was being advanced that no one figured out. I don't think even the former minister could have figured it out. No one could figure out exactly how much money would be allocated in the budget. There were no public disclosures required by law to say to the Guyanese people, we have received so much money, so this is how much we have received. Now by law it has to be placed in the Gazette, or the ministers can suffer a jail penalty of 10 years and a fine. So we have to realize what are you clamoring about then? What did you do then? What is taking place now? Now, even the environmental permits, when you look at the quality of the environmental permits that were issued under the previous administration, which they never disclosed, versus the ones that are issued under the current administration, and His Excellency and the Vice President have made it very clear these documents are going to be made public. But when they're public, you could compare them. You can see how there is better accountability in the permits issued by President Ali's administration versus the ones issued previously. You could see that. You could see the safety measures that are being brought in, but don't be confused. Don't be confused. You can't, in a license, change what the overall contract, the production sharing contract is about. You can't do that. The license is issued to facilitate what was agreed in the contract. So the license is subservient to the contract. But again, I raise it with you so that you can consider for yourselves what was promised in the previous administration versus what was done. Now, we have the former head of the Environmental Protection Agency who issued those licenses, who signed them, and criticizing the license that are issued under the current administration, which are far superior, provide for cap and stacks to be held here. These are things that you can put, they're a specific thing, it's called a cap and stack, so that you can put it on a well. It provides for when natural gas, if you're flaring, it provides that there's a fee, so there's a penalty. It provides for other matters of how much we disclose, how much wastewater is being released. All of these things are disclosed. Now, they weren't before. So
you have the former head of the Environmental Protection Agency who wants to say that, look, this is what should happen. The question that the nation should ask him, and all of you, or every citizen should ask him, is why didn't you do that when you were there? Why didn't you see the value? Is it that you only got a brain in 2020 after August? Is it you got struck by an attack of intellect? That's the only thing. You see, for example, today, the front page of one of the newspapers quotes from an expert to say how unfair it is that if you have a disagreement in the audit, you have to go to arbitration. That's what the contract provides for. And that only demonstrates how poor the contract was. A, the contract was negotiated by the previous administration. B, he posits the view and advances the thing that somehow having an arbitrator when there is a dispute between the two sides is somehow wrong, and it's somehow disadvantageous to the government. But ladies and gentlemen, you got to think about how the real world works. This is why courts exist. Courts exist because at least two parties, it might be more, don't agree on something. So you need an independent referee to adjudicate and say which side is correct. Otherwise, there'd be a deadlock. And you would have one side saying, I am right, and the other one saying, I am right. And they both can't be right. But you have that snowballing all the time. So how would you do? Would you just continue? So the contract says after 60 days, if there is no resolution, then you have to go to an arbitrator. And an arbitrator will decide on the fixed rules. Arbitration is an established process. It works in the way that you would expect it to work. And you would want those people to be able to determine which side is right, and the matter is put to rest. So that's how you settle disputes in the civilized world. You have an independent referee that both sides have confidence in. Now, there is a backhanded slap to say in the same article, to say that the court system, and it's an insult that we have to go to arbitration and we're not going to a court. Now, I want to say this to you, ladies and gentlemen. The Guyana court system is what it is. But ask yourselves, how many people have such confidence in the system? And the system, any system of adjudication, any system that there is for the settlement of disputes, the confidence that the people have in it, and the confidence that and their ability that they demonstrate is how you get how people feel that this system is solid, and we can take it for sure that if we go here to settle a dispute, then we will get the dispute settled. Now, without getting into the details of it, how many average Guyanese citizens think that the court systems in Guyana are so geared? We don't have great confidence in the court system. Perhaps during the election period and some of the rulings that came out of the Guyana Court of Appeal, and the attitude of what was going on, it went a long way to undermining confidence. When matters got to the Caribbean Court of Justice, people felt a little bit more sure. People felt a little bit more certain that justice would be given, a lot more certain that they would receive justice there. But if you were to say that any dispute under this contract, you had to go through the Guyana court system, The Guyana court system, regrettably, and it's a fact. I am a lawyer practicing for more than 25 years, and I will tell you that it is a fact that the Guyana court system is overburdened, and as a result it's slow. And the confidence in the system is undermined in large part because of how slow and how long it takes for matters to be resolved. There are other challenges which relate to specialized skills that may be necessary. But there are issues in relation to confidence in the system. And we have to accept that. The Attorney General, I know, is doing everything that he can to improve public confidence in the court system. The judiciary is doing everything they can to improve confidence. But a big part is we need more judges, we need more personnel, and that's going to happen, and we're going to have that position come about too. So yes, that is going to happen, but you got to say, what is it now, and why is arbitration such a foreign concept, and why is arbitration seen as if it undermines sovereignty? It doesn't. The Caribbean Court of Justice is our final court of appeal, and it sits in Trinidad. It doesn't undermine the sovereignty of the nation. Before there was the Caribbean Court of Justice, well, a long time before I was around in the very early 70s, there was the Privy Council. A lot of the Caribbean still go to the Privy Council. Trinidad still goes to the Privy Council. Jamaica still goes to the Privy Council. Antigua. So we have to face the realities of where we are. But again, what I say is, be careful about how people create a narrative, and they position themselves in a way as if what they're saying is the god-awful gospel truth, that this is the greatest travesty in the nation, and that somehow everything should fall to the ground because of what's taking place, because of what's happening. Somehow or the other, we get to that position. But how could that be? When the assumptions, the narratives that are being woven are false narratives. Those false narratives lead to the conclusions that are being advanced. But those conclusions are preposterous in the real world because of the false narrative upon which it is founded. So the foundations of the argument are nonsensical. Makes no sense. Absolutely no sense. To be critical of matters like that is simply silly. You have to have a dispute resolution mechanism. Every contract, as Guyana moves forward and as commercial activity increases in Guyana, more and more contracts will provide very detailed dispute resolution mechanisms. In fact, so many international contracts where large corporations are doing business, multinational corporations, they provide very specific dispute resolution clauses, and they go to arbitration because it's usually you go to one tribunal, a tribunal that is agreeable, the arbitrators are agreeable, and you get a decision. So you don't have the appeal process. It's what lawyers refer to as a one and done. And in many cases, that's it. And we have to accept that arbitration is a very sensible way of settling disputes, especially with large corporations. Now, these things that are ongoing and these things that are being advanced, again, local government elections are coming up. Nomination day is Monday. Bear these things in mind when you start to hear, we're going to get into the heat of the elections following Monday. When you're going to hear all of the stories being spun, all of the wild accusations that are based on no foundation of fact, it's this one said so, and this one suspects so, and this one thinks so. It's like a whole big issue being made about things that are really not things. That's it. It's advancing arguments based on if this were so. But the if this were so is not true. I mean, not to belabor the point in the petroleum sector, but all of the hullabaloo about the IHS market audit report and wanting the audit report to be made public. Now, when you do the audit, the Revenue Authority is trying to, which forms part of the government's technical arm that would scrutinize, examine, and then we'd have a final thing. And yes, they should work faster. That's a fair criticism. But to say that the government is somehow hiding something, when you're in the process of doing this, how could you just publicly put everything out? How would that make sense? How could governance take place in that way? You got to look at what happened before, and you got to look at what is going on now. And you have to say, well, we're getting more information. We're getting information about the contracts. We're getting information about the royalties paid. We're getting information about how much is being paid by, how much the Guyana government is receiving for its share of profit oil. You're getting that information all the time. And let us not be fooled, ladies and gentlemen. Let us understand. As with any issue, there will be differing opinions. But doesn't mean that one's wrong and one's right. It never could be that way. People have opinions, and social media is cultivated in our psyche now, the need and the ability and the want to express our opinions. But our opinions must be informed opinions to be taken seriously. To make sense, to be credible, they must be informed opinions. We can't just make wild accusations and wild assertions. And we have to look about a government that is the current government keeping its word on so many things. They said there would be disclosure. There is disclosure. There is accountability. There is a formula for how much money is taken and how much is kept in what we refer to as the sovereign fund. And we have, so the fund, everybody knows what's in it. We know how it's going to be invested. We know the agencies, what rules they must obey, what caliber of agency is provided, what ratings they have in the world stage. And we know that when it's put into the budget to fund infrastructure and other projects, it's discussed in Parliament and debated, so you know where it's going. You might not agree. I understand that. It's hard for some people to agree on anything. I appreciate that. But it doesn't mean because you disagree that you're right. It's like, and I've dealt with this on earlier programs, and it's worth touching on it. There are people who express all the persons that they've spoken to. How many lawyers, how many judges, how many everything, that sanctity of contract is nothing. And that we should renegotiate the contract. And we should do. I'm at a loss to understand why ordinary, reasonable people, or apparently ordinary and apparently reasonable people, don't understand that a contract is important, that it must define, it is signed to define the relationship between parties. And you can't willy-nilly breach contracts. And you can't pressure and coerce people to change contracts either. That's why contracts formed under duress or undue influence are unenforceable. That's a principle, an established principle of the common law. Our laws are very clear about that. Our courts have always upheld it. So you can't go about, not because you don't like it anymore, to just break contracts. You see, for a very long time, contracts would be of convenience. And people might have gotten into the impression, because we weren't a very commercial country, people just thought a contract, okay, you just sign it and you move on, you'll discuss it later. But that's not how it works in the real world. It can't work that way. And you will understand as we go forward as a nation, and as all the business end of things in Guyana get more serious, and as commercial activity increases, as it's going, we have the fastest growing economy, so commercial activity is going to go up. The importance of contracts are going to become more and more relevant. And we can't just break contracts. The sanctity of contract is important. It is not a great contract, but it is the contract we sign. But keep harping about it as if there is some great ill if you do not do the thing of just breaking the contract, which is a dishonorable thing. And there will be penalties. Breach of contract will have awards and remedies to it. So you can't just say, well, oh, we don't like it, we're not getting enough, we should get more. Yes, I agree, we should get more. Yes, I agree, it is not a great contract. But it is a contract that we signed. And as a people, we got to be better than that. We got to understand that we have to find other ways of working around that problem. We have to address it. But simply saying sanctity of contract and oh, you spoke to this lawyer or that lawyer and you have clung number 1, clung number 2, clung number 3 in the papers promoting and promulgating these ridiculous notions that, oh, yes, you can renegotiate contracts, yes, contracts that are unfair. In the real world, speak to lawyers that actually have the experience of dealing with matters like this, of this magnitude, of this significance, and see whether those armchair experts who write on these grand scales could actually go into a court of law and prove what they're saying and succeed with the advanced legal knowledge from the advanced institutes of learning that they claim to come from. Don't go down that road. Understand that you've got to take these things as they are, and you've got to work with them, and you've got to find ways to make better of it. Yes, but you can't just willy-nilly break contracts. That's not right. It's not lawful. So we got to understand where these things stand, but not allow ourselves to be beaten into this rhetoric all the time that you could do this, and if it was me, I would do this, and if it was me, I would do that. It can't be. No one should break the law. No one should breach their contracts. These are things that are serious. But harping on it, saying it 100 times doesn't make it right. Saying you don't agree repeatedly doesn't make it right. It can't make it right. It can't be acceptable. And we've got to accept that the rhetoric versus the reality, the narrative versus the reality. And this is what we must understand. decipher what you are being told, put it into the context of where it is. You hear arguments that go on about the contract, about local content, and I plan to deal on a next program a little bit more in detail about our local content laws and the effect that it has had. It's been around for more than a year now, and the effect it has had and how it is being developed. But at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, decipher what is, you know, la la land up here versus reality, and understand that you got to live in the real world. You got to live with the reality of what we have, you know, and law and order depends on it. And the same way that, you know, if you've watched the show before, that I am so critical of persons who choose to breach the law, whether it's by hate speech, whether it's simple criminal offenses, simple matters of threatening language and those things. If you breach the law, speeding, whatever, there should be consequences. The same way, if you break contracts, there are consequences. I would never advance on any forum. Law and order is important, but we gotta understand in our psyche, law and order don't only relate to police matters. Law and order doesn't only relate to going to the magistrate court and answering charges when you've been charged. Law and order, part of it, in the rule of law, includes and requires that you do so in the civil side of the court system. Your contracts, your agreements that you make. Law and order includes all of that. You can't just decide to breach those things. So it's important. And I want to emphasize, and I can't emphasize it enough. I hope that I've conveyed to you the important aspects that you must consider. Local government elections are coming up, and you're going to hear all kinds of tall tales and rhetoric being spun, as has always been the case with people in the opposition and people who have their own agendas. But you got to decipher from that what's reality, what is actually the position, not what you wish the position would be, because there is no point in pursuing that. The speculative what ifs, there's no point in reasoning through those things. What you have to do is face where you are and address the conclusion that you have. So with local government elections coming up, listen to what you're going to be told. Listen to who are the people that have been delivering. You hear, and it's a frequent thing, about manifesto promises with the PPP. And the PPP hold themselves accountable, delivering on the house lots, housing, roads, the bridges, the development of ports, development of hotels, disclosing information, disclosing contracts, saying how much money we get for the royalties and how much money from profit oil. All of these things were promises that were made, and they have been kept. The roads are being built daily at a speed across this country. Construction is at a pace. Hotels are going up. There is, of course, as I always say, right near to here, you could see the proof of Geraldo and Lorenzo Alfonso and Aiden Hotel. And you could see that the structures are up. It's moving. You could see development taking place. These were promises that were made. These are the promises that are ongoing. And the last thing I want to raise with you, one of the hats I wear, in addition to being an MP, is I am chairman of the Airport Authority. And I want to say that there were some announcements recently. There was, of course, the British Airways announcement, of which we are very, very proud. and President Ali is he is a great tactician, and I don't want to go into it, but he is a phenomenal tactician. And yesterday we heard of 2 more airlines wanting to fly to Canada and to Houston, which would bode well for us. Skycana, which was announced, is going to start on June 1st. That's so, I mean, you don't understand how much work went into all of that, but how much guidance came from his and how that got to where it is. And with flights like that happening, we're very proud of it, because what it will do is it will provide alternatives, and it will provide hopefully better service, and of course, hopefully with competition will hopefully lower the airfares. So for the coming summer, we might benefit from better prices, because there would be more than one carrier flying that route to Toronto and to Houston, and there would be more carriers, more airlines are all good. But I say that not only to say of the great work and the great guidance from His Excellency and the great work of the Airport Authority, but I say this: that, ladies and gentlemen, demonstrates in a tangible, real way how people feel this country is about where it's going and how it's being managed. That shows confidence in what this government is doing, and His Excellency and his ministers and the Vice President, and what they are doing and the policies that they are adopting, and that's why we're getting more traffic. That's why there is more demand. That's why more airlines are willing to invest in. They invest in promoting a route, flying the route. It's a considerable investment that has to be made. But that's why there is now more traffic at the airport. And with more traffic, more airlines are going to be interested, because, I mean, make no bones about it, they're coming for financial reasons. They're coming to do business, to make money. And we are now at a stage where we are attracting more people. So that is also a factor that you should put into the mix about how everything is going in the country, and who are the leaders that are bringing these things to Guyana, and who are the people who the government and the guidance. Those are the things that you must pay attention to. I know as election gets closer, local government elections, we're going to talk a lot more about policies. We're going to talk a lot more about, because you're going to hear nonsensical stories from the opposition, and I will do my very best to highlight them and to debunk them. But I want also, and I would like, respectfully, that all of you who are here and watching at tonight's program, to develop a little bit of critical thinking and listen to what people are saying, and take it not at face value, but scrutinize it and look at the realities of what they're saying, and what is being advanced and the agendas that are being put forward, and look at a government that has been, so far that they have been in office, they have delivered on their promises, they have been keeping their word, and you compare. I say that if you can't be accountability like happened, and it's in the Auditor General's report about the Georgetown beautification or whatever program it was called, and you can't account for hundreds of millions of dollars and provide vouchers, I say you don't put people like that back in control of public funds. Those are the things. Look around at what's doing. And of course, as always, I thank you for spending the better part of an hour with me. I thank you from wherever you are, in your homes, in your wherever you are, and you are joining us tonight. I thank you. Be safe, and as always, take good care, and may your God be with you. Good night.